Yo, what's going on guys? It's your mate Ride, and if your base is looking like this grubby old shanty shack or worse, one of the Pal Professor's production line soups, but you want it to look a little more like this sprawling field of modern architecture instead, then you're in the right place because in today's video, I'm going to be giving you all of my top building tips that every Palworld player needs to know. Let's check it out. Alright, but all jokes aside, I wanted to put this video out there to have a sort of beginner's guide to building resource, or a building 101 if you will, so it is going to be aimed at newer and inexperienced players. But if you've been building in Palworld for a long time and you've already learned all of the basics, don't worry, there still should be a few tips and tricks in here for you that are a little more advanced. If you guys get to the end of this video and you learn absolutely nothing new, then let me know about it in the comments down below, and congratulations, I'll give you a love-ander in a giveaway or something. Alright, but let's just kick this off because for tip number one, I want to start with the most fundamental system, which is Palworld's supporting mechanics. So in Palworld, you need to have a supporting piece every 2 tiles apart. Now, what I mean by a supporting piece is either a foundation piece like these wooden foundations or these stone foundations, for example, or you need to have a pillar. Either of these is going to work, but you need to have one of these connected to the ground every 2 tiles. So for example, if I were to start my build with a couple of wooden foundations over here like this, and then I were to start building out from these using the wooden roof tiles, then you're going to notice that I can't build more than 2 tiles before I get this error message saying that I need more support. So to fix that, I'm going to add a pillar at the end of these roof tiles, which will allow me to go another 2 tiles out, and then I just need to repeat this process if I wanted to keep going further. So this one is pretty straightforward, but we of course do need to learn how to walk before we can start to fly, or in the case of this next tip, float, because now that we've got the bottom level of foundation in place, we're going to be able to build above that foundation without the need for additional supporting pillars. So for example, you can see here that I've added a platform above the lower level foundation that extends all the way out over the structure that we already had in place. Anyway, that brings us to tip number 3, which is that pillars do not actually need to be snapped together in order to be considered as connected and thereby provide support. So if you were to go back and watch older building tip videos, you're going to see a lot of other creators talk about the floating structures that we just did, but they're going to tell you that the upper level structure needs to be parallel to the lower level foundation, and that's actually not true. As long as you snap a pillar on top of another one so that its central axis is within a close enough proximity to the central axis of the pillar below it, then it doesn't actually matter if those 2 pillars are on different angles or snapped together. For example, you can see here that I've built a helix skyscraper that requires all of my levels to be on different angles, and to do this, I've created a central pillar stack where each level is rotated by 5 degrees from the pillar below it, and by doing this, you can extend your upper level structures out over the base foundation without them needing to be parallel like you can see here. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the details on exactly how to do this because I already have a complete guide showing you how to build this skyscraper, and the entire first 8 minutes of that video is dedicated to the pillar stacking method. So if you want to learn how to do that, I'll leave a link to that one in the description below. But now that we know how all of these supporting mechanisms work, we're ready to move on to tip number 4, which is how to build over or underneath the water, because this is a question that constantly comes up during my build guides, especially one of my more recent guides, which is a beginner base built over the lake near the Plateau of Beginnings. So for this one, you need to make sure that you start from near the bank of the river or the body of water that you want to build over, and you're going to start with just a regular foundation piece like I'm doing here, and then you can go ahead and start using your actual roof tiles to build them out over the water. Now, the reason that you need to do it like this is because you've probably noticed that you can't directly place the foundation pieces into the water, or you're going to get this error message saying that they're not on the ground. And the same goes for the pillars. You cannot place the pillars directly into the water. So you need to start at the bank and then extend over the water using just floor tiles that don't go into the water. And then once you've got those in place, now you can go ahead and get yourself a wooden pillar, or any pillar for that matter, and connect it or snap it to the bottom of your floor tile so that it goes down into the water, and it has to be touching the bottom of the water like you can see mine is doing here, and that is still going to count as support. So now I can continue to extend this more tiles out just like we did before using the supporting principles. And so as long as the water is shallow enough for those pillars to reach the bottom and provide that support, then this is going to allow you to build entire networks of docks or whatever else it may be across the top of the water. However, in some situations, you're going to notice that the water is too deep, so your pillars aren't going to be able to reach the bottom and provide support. So in that scenario, you need to go ahead and use an exploit that allows you to get underneath the water so you can build all of your foundation there. Like you can see I've done for this research facility that I'm working on, which floats atop the water. Now to do this, you need to go ahead and get yourself an alpha ecthidy. Now it has to be an alpha ecthidy specifically because they are a little bit bigger. So you're going to notice this guy is quite large. And then what you want to do is just wade into the water really slowly until the stamina bar appears. And then you want to turn around and slowly walk back out just until the point where your stamina bar goes away. Now you're going to notice that your character is completely submerged under the water, and that's what we want. You just want to keep walking back towards the land until you're no longer swimming and the stamina bar is gone and your character is still submerged underwater. And at that point, you now want to go ahead and just do a quick little relog. So I'm going to log back out and log back in again. We'll be back in just a second. And there you go. When you log back in, you should notice that your character is now fully submerged underneath the water. We've got the fishes down here. We've got all of this old debris that fell in after I destroyed the build above. But most importantly, we've got all of these foundation pieces that I've laid underneath the water, which supports the rest of the build above it. Now, notably, you can only do this in bodies of water that are above sea level. So you can see here, we're up on the iced volcano near the Lily Lileen Tower. However, if you try and build in the ocean, you can still get underneath the water, but you just can't build there because you're going to get this error message that says you cannot build below sea level. But as long as you are above sea level, then you can just build foundation pieces wherever you want, like you're seeing now, as if you were just on regular old terrain. But moving on to tip number 5, this one is that build order matters. So for example, if I wanted to build a little staircase like this one, which is enclosed by the walls to the side of it that leads up to a second story, then you obviously can do so. You can see it right there. But it matters which order you do it in. So for example, if I were to start that build with my stairs and then try and place the walls on the side, you notice that I can't. I get this error message saying that it overlaps with another object. But if I do it the other way around and I place my walls first and then place the stairs between them, then I have no issues. Now, another thing I noticed this on was just with some of the pillars, not all of them, mind you, but just some pillars and some fences. So for example, if I were to build a little structure like this with the clean fences, no issues. I can get my pillar in, I can get my fence in, but if I were to do it the other way around, so we've just got the fences first, and then I try and put the pillar in, I'm not going to be able to do it. So it just matters which order you do it in. If you're having trouble putting something in place that you feel like should be able to go there, maybe just try and do it in a different order. Moving on though, tip number 6 is that the replacement feature is your best friend. So for example, if we've got a little piece of foundation like this and we want to put some walls on the side, you're going to notice that we're going to have issues because we're really close to this rock. So it's going to clip into that rock and the full wall is not able to do so. However, what we can do is use some half walls or triangle walls because they have much better clipping. So as you can see, this triangle wall is able to clip into the rock at the bottom end. And the same goes for this one. This one actually clips into the rock quite a bit. But once we've got the triangles in place, we can go ahead and grab the full walls and use the replacement feature, which for me on mouse and keyboard is going to be 4. For you, it's going to be something else. And then we can replace those walls with the full ones. And now they clip into this rock without any issues. And as another example of this, you can also use it to create little features like this. You can see here we've got a window with a sliding door, and this one actually became possible with the addition of the upside down triangles. Here we go. So what we're able to do is get an upside down triangle and place it there, and then we can use a lower triangle and place it there. So now we've kind of got 2 panels within the location of 1 full tile. So now if we use the replacement feature, we can go ahead and replace this bottom tile with a window, and then we can replace the upper tile with a door, and now we get this. So we get both of these tiles meshing together so that we get this little sliding window, which is kind of neat. Now, the other area that I found this to be super useful was when trying to create diagonal lines with the inverted triangles, like you can see here, because in these situations, it can sometimes be really tedious to snap the upside down triangles to the bottom of things. So I typically find it easier to start out by placing a full wall and then replacing those with the triangular ones. But that one's more of just a personal preference of mine, which I think can save a little bit of time. And the next one I want to talk about is the snapping and alignment features, because even though this is a pretty basic one that most of you probably use all of the time, if you are new to the game, then it is definitely something that you need to know about. So you can see here on the right hand side, I've got some build options. I can hit X to build, and then a little further down, I've got right trigger to enter the axis alignment mode. And that's the one we want, because this is going to allow us to snap our furniture or various building pieces to other pre-existing pieces. So you can see I can snap this bench against the back of the wall, and then I can continue to snap more of these in front of one another, or I can come to the side and snap them to the side like that. And you can even drag them apart to create spacing between them, which you can see by this blue line, while keeping them nice and aligned. Now, even if you are a more advanced player, what you might not be doing enough of is using this feature to get your furniture into awkward spaces. So let's say we've got a bar over here and we want to create some shelving with some bottles at the back. Let's go ahead and place our wooden shelf. And if I wanted to start this over in the corner, I'm not actually able to do so because I can't snap this piece in the corner. I can only snap it in the middle of this wall here, but that's going to create an awkward space, because if I put it there, then I don't have enough room on the side to put another one without it going through the wall. So instead of doing that, and instead of just trying to line this up manually, what I can do is get another smaller furniture piece and I can snap that to the wall. And these wooden stools are great for this because they don't only snap in the middle of the walls, they can also be snapped to various points along the wall. But this one works great if you just put it in the middle, and then you can go ahead and now you can get your wooden shelf and you can snap it to the side of this stool, and you can see it's much closer to the wall while still being flush at the back. So now you can just go ahead and you can snap a bunch of these to the side of that. But this technique is going to save you a ton of time and prevent the need for manual lineups. For example, here's a library that's part of my all-in-one mega base, which would have been nearly impossible without it, because you're also able to use this to snap pieces on top of one another, which brings us to tip number 8, which is stacking. So broadly speaking, stacking is a great way to save space, but what you're probably going to mostly end up using this for is to make things float. So for example, you can see I've got these TVs, which look like they're mounted on the wall because I'm trying to build this like little sports bar area for my stadium. And if you want to do stuff like that, what you need to do is build objects below them. So in this particular case, I can build a wooden bench here, and then I'm going to place that. And then I can go ahead and grab my TVs and build them on top. So we're just going to get 3 of these. I'll just get 1, and then I'll build that with Anubis. He's going to put that there. And now that you've got it on top of the bench, you can delete the bench, and I can delete this piece of floor, and it simply floats there. So it's not like it's actually connected to the wall, it's just floating. You could do this in any old area. I could do this in the middle of the field, and the same thing would happen. The TV would just float. But this one is by no means merely decorative, because you can also stack various production facilities. For example, if you wanted to stack your plantations on top of one another, you can do so by creating this little T section out of wooden benches, which allows you to put your plantations on top, and then you can delete the benches beneath before placing more plantations. And yes, your pals will be able to access all of these. Or if you wanted to stack your breeding farms on top of one another, you can create this 3x7 stack of shipping containers to serve as a platform for the farm, and then you can delete each layer and build another farm directly below the one above, working your way all the way down to the ground level. And that brings us to tip number 9, which is how to fit 2 oil extractors onto a single node. So for this one, head over to any oil node and they're all going to look exactly the same. So this should work for any of them. And then locate this extra large crack in the rock and pretend that that is 12 o'clock. And then you want to turn to 3 o'clock so that you can locate this rock. Now, I find it's easier to just find this oil crack than find this rock in the first place. But if you just know what this rock looks like, then sure, you can just start by looking at the rock. Then you want to go ahead and get your crude oil extractors, and you want to make sure that you place it so that the back end, which has these little silos, is facing away from you. So face that one away from you, and then you want to sort of line it up in the center of the peak of this rock. So you're just going to slowly walk this all the way in until you can actually build it, and you should be able to just see the bottom of it peeking through the oil here. So you want it to be like right about there. That's looking good. Then you want to build this, and you want to use continuous build so that you can keep walking in a straight line until you can place another one. So you don't want to move to the left or the right. You just want to keep walking straight until you can place the second one. So now that you've got 2 of these in place, you can just get your Anubis to build them and you're good to go. And for tip number 10, I want to talk broadly about the base perimeter, because this is by far the #1 thing that I get asked about on the channel. So first of all, if you're trying to build outside of the base, then your structures will decay unless you change this world setting that prevents them from being destroyed over time. So a lot of the bases that I feature on this channel throughout the community builds or my own builds turn this setting all the way down to 0 so that there is no structural decay outside of the base. So if you're wondering why my bases seem to be bigger than the circle, then that is going to be the reason why. But the other thing that seems to come up all the time is the blue line that appears at 16 tiles above the power box. So you can see it here, we're 16 tiles above the ground level, and this would seem to indicate that there is some sort of height limit to the base. However, that is not the case. The base in Palworld works as a cylinder, not a dome that goes over the power box, but nonetheless, you do get this blue line and it freaks a lot of people out. However, I can assure you that it basically does nothing. From what I can tell, it does nothing. Your structures won't decay if you build above them. You can build production nodes above it just fine. Your pals will be able to path above it. You can see I've got my Jelliet working up here, crafting away with some gold. All of my other gold has already been done. So it's just going to be a sort of, I don't even know, like it's just a sort of visual bug that people seem to freak out about. So I wouldn't worry about that one. If you see that blue line, just keep building. Your skyscraper is not going to fail. Speaking of visual bugs, you also might have noticed this unreachable by pals warning. Now, this is another one that people freak out about a lot, but don't worry, it doesn't necessarily mean that your pals cannot actually work on this node. For example, you can see my Jelliet is up here watering all of these, no problem, and I guarantee you he is eventually going to get to this one. You're going to be seeing a screenshot up now where my Gangler Ignises are working on some large ovens that literally say unreachable by pals while they are cooking the cake in them. So don't necessarily freak out about this one. I would just monitor the workstation, and if the work actually gets done, then you're good to go. All right, but we've got just one more to go, and this last tip is to help improve the game's performance when you are trying to work on large mega structures. So if you're someone who's got a 4-in-1 mega base or something like that, and you want to connect all of them, then this one is going to be for you, because you might have noticed that placing floor tiles, or technically roof tiles, is particularly problematic. So if I wanted to swap the floor below me with this glass tile, then the game is just going to shit itself. It's just going to lag out. And I think the reason for this is because it puts a particular strain on the pathing calculation, because you can see here that I can't even back out of this, it's so bad. But you can see here that all of my pathing or my roadwork is connected to this main base over here. So all of the pathing from that base needs to be extended to all the way up here. The game needs to recalculate this, which puts a high burden on its processing ability, and it affects the tiles all the way up here, even though they're completely outside of the base range. So the best way to avoid this is to disconnect your structures if you can. So for example, if I were to just go ahead and delete these 2 stairs, then I'm no longer going to have any issues with replacing the floor tiles here. This is going to be nice and easy now. We don't get any more lag. And that's because there's not really much processing calculation that needs to happen up here alone. All of the burden was coming from that base over there. So if you can keep your structures disconnected, then that's a really good way to save yourself some frustration. Or even if you just want to temporarily disconnect them while you work on other areas, that's a really good way to go as well. But that's going to do it. I hope you guys found this helpful, and if you did, remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you're not already. It really helps support the channel a lot, and if there's any tips that you think I left off of this list that should have been included, then let me know about them in the comments down below. Otherwise, thank you all for watching. I'll catch you next time. Have a good one.